walkthrough on a Ruby on Rails project that I built. It's essentially a application that allows teachers and students to register for courses. Here's the landing page. We'll get into that a little bit later. And I wanted to build this in a Docker container. So I'm going to open the command palette and just rebuild the container. So now this will take a few minutes, so just bear with me. I'll bring you back once it's already being built. The reason why this takes a while is because the app is very large. It has a lot of logic and a lot of DSLs. It does take a few minutes to install all the dependencies that our Docker container will need. So while this is building here in the terminal, we're going to go ahead and just do a brief explanation of what the logic is in the structure of the framework. All right, so the best place to start is with the test. So we have our test here under the spec folder. All these are tests, so we have tests for features, models, and for factory bot. So this is a DSL helper. A DSL is a domain specific language. So I strongly suggest you Google that. It is the core of Ruby on Rails, really, because Ruby on Rails uses DSLs for its routing. It uses its active record based on DSLs and its controller actions on DSLs. Even the Gherkin framework uses DSLs to implement. So a lot of Ruby on Rails deals or revolves around DSLs. And here the tests as well rely on these DSLs. So here we are testing the constraints of our app, making sure our app does what I want it to do. So this is the thing or the test or the main thing that help our app to function the way it's supposed to. It doesn't allow for a certain thing and it does allow for others. We have scenarios like that we test for. For example, in this scenario, we are being context as a teacher. So when I'm logged in as a teacher, so here you see me logging in, creating a user as a teacher and logging in. So I create my user and I log in as that user, which is given the role of teacher. And here we have our first scenario. So scenario is sees the teach button if you're already not teaching as a teacher. And once you do that, you should expect to be at this route and this courses. So we navigate to the courses path and we say, okay, so we expect that page where we just navigated to in the routes to have this button that says click here if you want to teach this class. And we can expect the page to not have the content you're teaching this course. So that's basically an example of what the test. And then later on, once we actually start teaching the course or click on the button to teach, then we're going to expect to see, okay, now you're teaching this course and you can view your enrolled students. You see? So here I assigned the teacher to teach the class. I saved that. And then I visited the courses path again, the same path where before it said something else, but now it says you're teaching. And it says that you're teaching because I assigned the teacher to teach that class. So that's one example of test. And there's many of them. I believe there's 140 tests in these tests. So the RSpec test, and I also have another 100 and something in the Gherkin style test. I believe it's 190. I'll show you what that is later. So in total, it's over 200 tests. It's quite a bit for this app. Like I said, this app is pretty big, has a lot of tests, a lot of logic to it. So that's just a brief breakdown on what the tests do. And like I said, the tests are also aided by FactoryBot, which is also a DSL. And here we have our code over configuration file. So it's just setting a lot of dependencies for our app to run correctly. And this is basically things like this that you see here. So we're setting the dependencies, and it's actually already done. So we can exit out of there. All right. So I'll run the app later and show you a quick demo on what that might look like once it's running. For now, let's just take a quick look into the database. So once we start the database, this is what we want to start our database with, or what I decided to seed it with. I can seed it with whatever I want, but this is just a default for demo purposes, I guess. And here we have the schema, which is essentially the tables that Active Record uses to essentially create migrations and to define our users and our courses. All right, and that's the most important part of this folder here. And here, a really neat part about the test is that we can actually see our coverage in the test. Like, if I decide to download this file, I'll get an exact percentage of my test, and I can also run the test here. So if I run the test here, they're gonna fail right now because the reason they're gonna fail is because I haven't set the actual database, and I haven't set the dependencies that they need for the app to be functional. So once I set those dependencies, I'll do that here shortly, the test should pass. Actually, they did pass because in the test I'm creating the actual users that we're testing for. So if you remember, just to emphasize this, so I'm creating the user and logging in as a user. That's why they pass. You actually don't need the database for them to pass. But let's go ahead and show you what the test coverage would be in this file. So I'm going to go ahead and download this, and I'll show you in a moment. Okay, so here we have our test coverage file that I just downloaded. I downloaded this one a few hours ago. I'm going to go ahead and open this, but I don't want to open it with Edge. I'm going to open it with DuckDuckGo. And on top of these tests, we also have the Gherkin test that I'll run here in a moment once I show you the test. Alright, just took a moment to load there, but here we have the files and their coverage lines. We can see the lines that are in each of these files, the lines that are covered, the lines that we missed, and the average hits per line. And there's many of these. So we have all the files, the controllers, channels, models. So models is very important. We want to get as much coverage as we can there. And mailers, helpers, and others as well. So this is a really neat part of Ruby on Rails, that you can do things like this just by downloading our coverage file. So now we're going to go ahead and run the Gherkin style test. So we're going to say bundle exec cucumber, which is Gherkin style using Cucumber, which is a TSL for the Ruby Rails. And as you can see, all of these tests pass as well. So in code, what these would look like, let me show you. So this is the basic Gherkin style test here. So here's just the dependencies really more than anything else. And then our actual test should be under features file, I believe. Yep. So we have all of these scenarios, and we need to test for all of these scenarios that we have. And we have our definition of those scenarios. This is what you see here in the tests that are running. So here we have 92 steps and 14 scenarios complete. So this would be a step, and all of this would be a scenario. So that's just a brief overview on the test. Obviously, it's a bit more complex than that. This is just a brief introduction. We still have a lot more to cover. So here we have our app, in which the main point here is the model view controller of the app. So we have the model, which is the definition of our courses and users. So we have given roles, as you can see here, to the user model. So I'm using the same user model for students and teachers. I'm just giving them room. Obviously, when you're a student, you're denied certain permissions, and when you're a teacher, you're given access to certain privileges since you're an administrator as a teacher. And we do use Devise for the security. So Devise takes care of the encryption of passwords, and it takes care of many other things. So these are our definitions that we are checking for. So here, like for example, this is called assigned teaching course. So we say here for assigned teaching course, so unless you're a teacher, you cannot create a course. So we're just defining that and enforcing that through definitions. These are used in our controllers. So our controllers are our middleman between our core models here, the definition of our models, I should say. So the controllers will be the middleman between the models and the views. The views, which is the embedded Ruby and HTML, these should not have much logic here. They should have very minimal logic as possible. The only link you'll find is just this reference to Bootstrap. That's the only link in the entire program, and that's in the views at least. But like I said, we don't want any logic here at all. So we just run a script here that's not uh, anything related to our app. So we don't want to put any checks here. We don't want to put anything that might give access to our database from the views. So a lot of the views get redirected through here, which is the controllers. The controller, like I said before, is a middleman between the models and the views. These will enforce certain rules, and they will essentially create things as needed, and they will allow things to happen, not to happen. This is a great tool for passing our test. I'll say that much here. There's much more to this, obviously, and it did take me quite a few hours to fully understand how to build this app. This is my second attempt at a Ruby on Rails framework app. My first one looked very nice in the front end, but it was a bit lacking in the back end. This one has a very strong foundation, and I just haven't, I didn't worry too much about putting a lot of details to the front end for now. But I can definitely do that. It's much easier now that the back end is very robust. And I'll show you how that looks like in a moment. I'm going to go ahead and run the program. Alright, and I went ahead and got the app running here. I just started a Puma server. So I did set a few dependencies and just upgraded some things before I started the Puma server. And here we have the app. We're not going to use it here though. We're going to go to DuckDuckGo, and we're going to just give you a quick demo on what this app looks like. So let's go to our seed file in the database, and we should be able to see what we seeded it with, and let's log in first as a teacher. So I'm gonna log in as a teacher here. All right, and now I'm logged in as a teacher. And currently I'm registered to teach these three classes. I've already been messing with it a little bit, and I can teach more classes if I wanted to, or create a new course. Like, let's say I wanted to teach computer science too. Click on this, and now I'm teaching this class. I can see that there's one student enrolled. I can see the description. I can go back to course. I can edit this course since I have admin privileges. I can edit this course and update it. Let's just see what courses my student is registered for. So I can see the student is registered for these two courses. Okay. And I can also see the course again. Let's say I wanted to edit and say computer science 2, you will learn Ruby on Rails. And now I'm updating the description. Now let's say I want to edit it again and I want to increase the capacity to 50 because I got a bigger classroom or something. So now I can get up to 50 students. Um, like I said, I can edit that since I'm the teacher. And you can also create students and see the students that you've created before. Like, let's say I wanted to create a student. Let's go ahead and name him John, and then John Doe. I'm gonna name him JD at gmail.com. And then we're gonna create a password for him. And we can send this password to his email so he knows it. And then once he's able to log in, he can reset his password later. But he's given a default password at account creation by the teacher. And the teacher can see the password as well. You can see the users I've created in the past as well. And that's basically it. Let's say I wanted to create another student. I'm just gonna not put effort, and I'm gonna just create like something that's not well formatted, and it's gonna give me errors. It says the passwords don't match, the password is too short. Okay. So your password has to be strong enough to actually create the password. It has to meet the minimum requirements. Now let's say I wanted to find this algebra class um, by searching the CRN. So I'm searching it, I see that there's no enrolled students currently in the course. And if I search for this CRN, it's 345, then it'll show me this other class here. And let's say I put a bogus CRN that doesn't exist, then it'll tell me the course is not found. Please try again with valid course details. So that's my basic experience as a teacher. So I'm just keeping it basic for now, for speed purposes, because it is quite a big app. So now I'm going to log in as a student so you can see what that looks like. So I'm logging in as a student. All right, now I'm a student and I'm logged in, so I can see all these classes here. Let's say I don't want to take this class anymore, and instead I want to take operating systems. So now I'm registered for it, and if I want to see how many people can register for the class, I can see that. I can see the name, and if I want a description, I need to click show course, then it'll show me the description. Keep in mind, it does not show me the description here. Only when I click show course, it shows me the description. And if I wanted to search it by CRN instead, you can also do that. So as a student, remember with a teacher, when you searched it, it gave you all these options to edit and whatnot. As a student, you don't get those options. All you see is the basic info and back to courses. You can also have a homepage here where you can see all your courses that you're registered for, and you can go to the landing page, you can sign out, and if you try to sign in, you'll say, well, you already signed in. So now I can sign out, and that's just a basic overview of what this app does here. And go ahead and stop right there for the demo, and you can actually stop the server. So let's say I wanted to see how many users are in my program. So I can simply start a Rails server and say user home, and I can see all my users. I can actually modify my users from here as well and create new users from here. I can create new users using the Rails console, or I can do it through the seeds file here as well. I can literally create a new teacher by copying this and I paste it. Row 1 is teacher. That's dictated in my JSON serialization. And let's say I want the password to be the same, but instead I'm going to do teacher 3. And now I have 3 teachers. I have teacher 2, and teacher 3. So I just created a user right there. You can also create it here by just creating a new user and setting it to a variable and defining their attributes as needed. But we're going to go ahead and move on forward to, I would like to explain as well why I did this in a Docker container, why I implemented this or decided to implement this in a Docker container. So the reason why I decided to implement this in a Docker container was because it will be runnable anywhere, really. So if I wanted to run this application in a completely different computer, or I wanted to use like Kubernetes to create instances and backups, it would be much easier. Like I can probably get it to run on one computer, which will take a lot of effort because I have to set all the dependencies. And if I wanted to run it on a different computer, then it's really going to be a pain because the dependencies will need to be set just like they were in the first computer. And that takes a lot of time that you needlessly don't have to wait. There's a smarter way to do it, and that's by using something like Docker. So Docker helps us to essentially containerize this application. So I'm running this on Windows, and in Windows, I'm running this on a Docker container or a Docker image. So on the Docker container, that's where we set all the dependencies, and that's why, remember at the beginning I built it using the command palette, and the Docker container will basically be its own tiny version of operating system. You can think of it that way. It essentially is a Linux distribution that will have not much by default, but it'll have enough to run your application. So it has the benefit of isolating your application from your main files, and you can restrict what files your application has with your main computer. And without Docker, gems, node versions, and database drivers may conflict across projects. Each app has its own isolated container with locked versions. You can have Kubernetes and have them be completely different instances of each other. You just have to coordinate their databases and they can be used as one app. Uh, Without Docker, like developers must manually install Ruby on Rails and everything, like I said. And this is as simple as just running one command, and then you have your app ready in any computer. So you can use Docker to spin up like MySQL or PostgreSQL, Redis. I don't use Redis in this application, but I definitely have considered it due to Redis's speed. Uh, and it's just better for continuous integration, and production may run differently in Ruby or system libraries with Dockerized, it'll be a lot easier to work as a team as well. And it reduces that common issue where developers may say it works on my machine but not on yours. Like this will completely eliminate that entirely. And we can set our port here, like we can set it to port 3001 or anything else really. We can actually also create networks and run other Docker containers that will support this, and maybe even MPC servers or load balancers. We can connect it to API gateways, etc. I mean, the possibilities are limitless, really. So Docker is a huge tool. So I try to take advantage of it in as many projects as I can so that the project is runnable from anywhere, not just from my computer. But that's basically the gist of this application. Please let me know if you have any questions. I know it's quite a long video, but this is a very big app, and this is just a brief breakdown. There's still much more to cover here. But again, thank you for your time.